Howdy, folks. Welcome back or welcome aboard. We are glad you're here. You are listening to the Doc Owen Show. This is Richard Doc Owen, joined in the Hilltop Studios by...
I'm Surefire.
And...
Uncle Bocce.
We got a full house.
Back.
We're back. He's sort of back. I asked him before we get into our normal routine, but I asked Uncle Bocce before we went on the air if he had been watching the Olympics, and your response was,
nah.
Exactly. Like, okay, so let me think what question number 2 is. I mean, just cut the conversation off right there, and then you said, why? I didn't ask
too political.
You. It's too political. Mm-hmm. To which Ms. Surefire said,
"Oh yeah, everything is
exactly."
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so
good Lord.
I sure am glad this is an educational program where we connect the dots and deliver truth to youth and don't talk politics.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
We are all over the social media as Doc Owen Show, DOCOWENSHOW. We are on the big boys. We're all over Facebook. We are on Twitter. We're now on Stitcher, and we are basically back on SoundCloud.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And we have reconnected with the big boy out there. iHeart. I think they call it iHeart Radio, or it's just iHeart.
Yeah.
We were on that before. And we're always available on Red State Talk Radio, which is that's where our roots are, and where we have a lot of our listeners are on Red State Talk Radio. We're really glad to have you. And it's called the 405, which is out on the left coast. It's kind of the Red State Talk Radio of the left coast.
That's right.
I mean, we're all over the internet. These shows are broadcast globally, so it's kind of fun. So
wherever internet is permitted in the country.
Yeah, that way all 3 of our listeners can take heart that there are others. Okay. We start the show. We have a blog, DocOwenShow.com, which is growing in popularity. That's where Uncle Bocce places all of his research, even stuff that he doesn't get to on the air. When you are searching history like he does, you wind up with about 3 or 4 times as much material as you actually get to boil down and bring to the air. So if you hear something that you would like to, one of these presidents that you would like to know something more about, or an incident or something like that, you can go to the DocOwenShow.com blog, and it'll be over on the right-hand side, right?
That's right.
We have free FREE apps for both the iPhone and Android. You can listen to our podcast, go out there, search the history, listen to us live. They're really neat little devices. Those apps are. It's good access to the show. There's probably quite a few folks listening to it on their app right now. That's how that thing works. We start every show in a very traditional manner. Ms. Surefire gives us a inspirational quote. Uncle Bocce gives us a little bit about today in history at some major event or occurrence, and then I round that out with a leadership quote, or something from our friends at the Optimist Club. Generally, Ms. Surefire, take it away.
And tonight's quote comes from PassItOn.com.
Yes.
Kind of doing different websites here and see what
good for you.
What gets me, yeah. So today's quote comes from a gentleman I think a lot of people would know that likes sports. is Lou Holtz.
Yeah.
He's American football coach.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. Never could hold a job more than 5 years. That's why we just refer to him as an American football coach.
Ah, there you go.
He traveled all over. I knew him when he was at Arkansas.
Ah, okay.
Then he went to Notre Dame. And then
He went all over.
Yeah, he does. He traveled.
Yeah, it's like a resume, like just a phone book for it. Anyway, his quote is, motivation determines what you do. Attitude determines how well you do it.
Aha.
That's a good coach-type quote.
Yes.
Yes.
Motivation determines what you do, and attitude
determines how well you do it.
right. That one of my favorite quotes. I don't know where it came from, but was attitude. Your attitude determines your altitude.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I've heard that.
That's
yes.
true. Yeah.
Okay.
That's
Very
a
good.
one.
Good job,
Thank you.
Uncle Bocce.
Yes.
What happened?
First things first.
Yes, sir.
Happy birthday, George Washington. On this day, George Washington was born, February 22nd.
Ah.
Yes, so happy birthday, man. Now, and the other thing that happened today in 1819, the U.S. finally acquires the whole territory of Spanish Florida.
Oh, okay.
That happened, yeah.
Which includes your favorite location.
St. Augustine?
Now you got to say it like you said it wouldn't.
Oh, San Agustin.
There you go.
There you go.
Uncle Bocce's favorite spot.
Yep.
Okay, that's it for the points in history.
Yeah,
for now.
that's it for today.
I just didn't want to take it away from you. Good job. The leadership quote tonight comes from our friends at the Optimist Club, and it's about purpose. And it's from Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, who, as you would surmise, was a German, and he was a writer and a statesman. He had back in the 1750s. He was born in 1749 and died at the age of 82. So he lived,
He's around for a while.
Yeah, writers tend to live a long time. They don't over-exercise. The greatest thing in this world is not so much where we stand as in what direction we are moving.
That's a good one. Kind of
That's
goes
true.
with mine a little bit.
It does go with
Yeah.
it. Yeah. And after Uncle Bocce does his history thing, I've got some more sports reference. But we always, we come out of our three-way thing into Uncle. I got one more thing.
Good for you.
It's from last week.
Okay.
Before we dive into the show, I want Ima, for those of you who did not hear last week's inspirational note from her, all right, I want you to hear this quote that she delivered last week. Take it away, ma'am.
The quote is, illegal immigration is crisis for our country. It is an open door for drugs, criminals, and potential terrorists to enter our country. It is straining our economy, adding costs to our judicial, healthcare, and education systems.
So today is February the 22nd, 2018, right?
Yes.
Just to show you how up we are. When do you think that quote was created?
I'd say within the last 2 weeks.
Within the last 2 weeks. That's what most people would say. Or a shorter time frame. I mean, somebody could have said that this morning.
That's
And
true.
first of all, we would know about it.
Yeah, right.
Not like the age in which you always talk,
Yeah.
where you
Yeah.
had to go to the town square and it was like 3 months before you heard a guy's quote. And it'd
Right.
been,
You might have even forgot by the time he was going to say it again.
okay, so 2 weeks. Uncle Bocce says 2 weeks. Hold on a minute. Most of the listening audience says 10 days. So you guys seem to be in the same category.
Okay.
All right. They just tuned into me. Ms. Surefire, what's the date on that quote?
It was said sometime in the 1700s.
Oh, yes.
1700s. hundreds.
Yeah.
You get it?
God, imagine. Yes. Now I remember that because I remember reading it.
About all of, I mean,
Yeah.
it's like, when?
Oh, now who was
Right.
it that said that? Oh, Thomas Jefferson.
I don't think so.
No?
Unless, if he did, he stole the quote.
Uh-oh.
Who's it say it's from?
Timothy Murphy. He was a rifleman
That's his
in
cousin.
the American Revolutionary War.
Well, there you go.
So,
That's
unbelievable.
good. That really is. See that?
I mean, just right on
History
the money.
repeats itself.
Unfortunately, yes, it does.
Yep.
If you don't learn from it, that's the
That's
rest
correct.
of that
That's true, too.
We
Well,
may.
good.
I can't tell you how many times we may repeat that until the audience comes in, calls in, and says, "Okay, we get it."
So I'll save it. For him. I'll save it. Right
Save it.
Here.
Yeah, do.
Okay.
Very much so.
Okay.
We'll put it out on the blog.
That was a good find.
Yeah. So
that was lucky.
let's. We will now. We have a. I'm just going to tell you very briefly before Uncle Bocce walks us through a bit of history. I've forgotten since we took a week off exactly which president we're on, but we have an excellent conversation for you to listen to this evening with a gentleman by the name of Paul Sutliff. And if you don't recognize the name, I bet you'll remember it after the conversation we have. Mr. Sutliff is a high school teacher up in New York, in Rochester, New York. And he's an author. He has written numerous textbooks that are used in the New York school system. So he's a pretty bright guy. And he does his research, he does his homework, and he knows how. He deals with our target audience day in and day out. And I really think you'll enjoy the conversation that we had.
Awesome.
So that's the bulk of the show. Uncle Bocce,
Yes, sir.
who are we on, man? Who are we talking
We're
about?
on president number 13,
Hey.
Millard Fillmore.
Of course, Fillard Millmore. I remember him well.
Remember? Yeah.
Right.
Zachary Taylor was president, and Millard was his vice president, and Zachary died while he was in office. So Millard
Almost immediately after
took
he
over.
office,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. It was within a year, I think.
That's pretty fast.
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, yeah, he grew up on a real small farm in New York, and he had his family was poor. Let's put it that way.
By Texas standards, all farms in New York are small.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I guess you're right.
We got farms the size of New York.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, absolutely. He received a basic education, and at the age of 15, he went to be an apprentice to a cloth maker, and I'll say more about that in a little bit. That's the age of 15.
Apprenticeship was standard practice in those days.
A British ship?
So
apprenticeship.
So the drugs did have an effect.
Apprenticeship. Yeah, apprentice. That's very true, and it's a practice that we should have today.
Sort of well, but not everything is out of his system. Okay, go ahead.
So, but anyway, he continued to educate himself. He enrolled at the New Hope Academy in 1819, and then he eventually taught himself the law. He wanted to be a lawyer, so he did. He did that until he was admitted to the bar in 1823.
I wish some lawyers we have today would teach them.
I do too, yes. Now, here we go to his apprenticeship. His nickname was Wool Carder, president, Carder, Wool Carder. If you don't know what a wool carder is...
That's why, because it was... I know. It has to do with his apprenticeship in the cloth-making business.
Exactly. And a wood carver is what separates the filaments.
Yes.
So that they can make cloth.
Yes.
So that's what that means. Okay, I didn't know that before I read this. So
that's from my experience in clothing.
He was also a member of the Whig Party, just like Zachary Taylor was. In fact, Millard Fillmore was the very last Whig who was president. He's from the state of New York. He is about 5'9", weighed about 175 pounds. He was a Unitarian, as far as religion is concerned. He was born January 7th, 1800, in Moravia. New York.
New York, yeah.
And he
Upstate.
died, he died from a stroke at the age of 74 in Buffalo, New York. And he is laid to rest there at the Forest Lawn Cemetery in Buffalo.
In Buffalo.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've been to Buffalo. I can understand having a stroke in Buffalo.
Yeah, I could too. He had 2 children, Millard Powers and Mary Abigail, and he served in office from July 9th, 1850 to March 4th, 1853.
Okay.
I believe the age when he became president, I think it was about 50. He was about 50. So he was fairly young.
Well, yeah, if he was, you said he was born in 1800.
Yeah. So,
18?
yeah, exactly. Well,
That
that's
would be
how I,
pretty close to 50.
yeah.
Did you do that in your
Exactly.
head, or did you need an Excel spreadsheet?
I need an Excel spreadsheet to figure that one out. Now, he had held several offices, mostly in New York State. He was in the New York State Assembly. He was in Congress as a Whig, served to 1843. And then in 1848, he became the comptroller of New York State. And then he was vice president.
That's where he got his campaign funds.
Exactly. And the presidential salary did not change.
$25K?
$25K, $710,000 a year in today's money. He married a lady by the name of Abigail Powers, and she died of pneumonia in 1853. Now, there's nothing about the election, because the election was in 1848, where he was elected vice president. As far
When you
as
say there's nothing about it, no,
there was no
distinguishing.
campaign, right? There was no campaign.
Oh, well, because he was vice president,
right?
he took over.
Right, and he just
Okay.
he slipped in like his accidency. Remember?
He was Gerald Ford,
Yeah, he was a Gerald Ford.
right?
Yeah, I guess you're right. Yeah. Well,
Right.
actually
Wow.
not, because Gerald Ford became president when Nixon resigned. Zachary Taylor died.
Okay.
Remember John Tyler? He was his accidency.
Yeah.
He got into because William Henry Harrison died. So this is the second one. No new executive departments, because Taylor had just opened up the Secretary of the Interior. So we had the same cabinet positions.
Okay.
Do you need me to go through them?
No.
Okay, let's move on then. There was one state admitted to the Union while he was there. It was California.
I want to talk to Fillmore right now.
Yeah, why did he let California?
Exhume Fillmore.
Yes, there we go. Exactly. Now, his court appointments, he had one Supreme Court appointment. He nominated 5 judges altogether. So there was one Supreme Court and 4 district courts
Yeah, circuit. Okay.
that he yeah. And I can continue on and not have to do anything next week, or we can stop there and do something next week.
Let's stop there and do something. How much you got for next week? Phil?
Not much.
He not. If I remember, like his name,
We need time
he
tonight.
wasn't real. Yeah, we do.
Yeah,
Like
so, okay.
good call.
Yeah.
But I mean, my apologies to. We're not cutting him off because he let California in.
Yeah.
Just for our listeners
he
in
didn't know
California,
about
we did not cut off the discussion of Millard Fillmore because you were allowed into the United
All
States.
you 405ers out
We-
there.
We thought about it, but we decided not to do it. Okay, good job.
Yeah.
Good job. And
We'll finish him off next week, and then we'll go on to Franklin Pierce.
you're just going through. You're right there in the section that was always hard to remember on the test about the sequence of presidents. Remember, I mean, you had certain ones that you knew. Okay, got it. But you're right in the middle in there, of the area that's like, what's his name? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Zach.
Yeah.
And the Millard Fillmore always got me because I'm sorry, I have more trouble calling a President Millard
Yeah.
than anything. Okay, so good job. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you and goodbye.
And yeah.
UNCLEBACI at DocGoInShow.com.
There you go.
You got a question?
Not right there. Not right there.
I'm
No,
just-
we're good.
I'm talking to the audience.
Before I think we got it. I think we'll have enough time. Before just a little, I got just a little bit, right? I'm going to give our listeners. This is a from factual, actual, personal experience moment.
Wow.
All right. I used to read when I was in my mid-20s. I read Time magazine, cover to cover. I was all over Time. I really liked Time magazine for some reason because I thought it.
Yeah.
You got that where you want it?
Yeah, I got Sorry.
We can hear it,
Don't
man.
go off.
Unplug it.
Okay, there it is. Go. Okay, we're back.
I used to read Time, and I didn't really know. Let's just say I didn't know what I was reading. It was there was Time and Newsweek, and Time was the front runner, and if you were in business, I was a rock and roll salesman, and all over 6 states, and I had to know what was going on in the world. So I read Time magazine, right?
Yeah.
Little did I know I was being indoctrinated, and you say, that was. I'm talking 1968. 50 years ago, I was reading Time magazine.
I was reading those magazines too, but
I was
a
1 years
rebel,
old.
so I read U.S. News and World Report.
Yes, but
I wouldn't read Time.
you weren't in on it then.
I was 1.
But the whole thing is, I read the movie reviews, and very quickly learned that if Time liked it, I didn't. Okay,
Aha.
and if
Good
Time
way of figuring
did
that out.
not like it, I went to see it immediately. And I was at the doctor's office
you.
yesterday, and I picked up. That's the only place they sell Time magazines to the doctors. They just never get around to canceling their subscription. Okay. So I picked up Time magazine and started to read the movie reviews. 12 Strong isn't quite strong enough. The most thrilling elements of Nikolai Fuglig's based on real events war drama, 12 Strong, are in ascending order, blah, blah, blah. It went on to really bash the movie. Mm-hmm. I have heard nothing but rave reviews about 12 Strong from my conservative friends for the past 2 or 3 weeks. Mm-hmm. That you got to go see 12 Strong. Mm-hmm. So I had to tear it out of the magazine just because I'm like, in 50 years, nothing has changed other than the size of their magazine because, that's the way they do things. Mm-hmm. Okay, let's see if we can get through Paul Sutliff conversation before the end of the show.
Let's do it.
Take it away. About to have a conversation with a young man. I have no idea where he is because he's area code 585, and I didn't look it up. But nowadays, that doesn't make a whole lot of difference anyway because he could be geo-grounded any place and just decided to dial up the telephone. His name is Paul Sutliff, and I think you should know more about him because of his approach to jihad is what got me interested in him. It's not just terrorism. There is also a very subtle, subversive side to the same sword, and that is the destruction of Western civilization. And, of course, we're the United States, so we're the spearhead for that. Mr. Sutliff, how are you, sir?
Well, very good, thank you.
Good, good. Where is area code 585? Where are you?
Rochester, New York.
Rochester. You don't sound like you're from Rochester.
We got that nasal A thing. That's about it as far as accent.
You also have a radio show, is that right?
Yes, Civilization Jihad Awareness airs on Wednesdays at 6 o'clock Eastern Time on Blog Talk Radio.
On Blog Talk Radio. I'm familiar with
Yes.
it. Well, good for you. Good for you. But your mantra, so the name of the show is Civilization Jihad, is that what you said?
Yeah, Civilization Jihad Awareness.
Awareness.
We're trying to wake everybody up.
There you go.
And,
so you're kind of in tune with what our tagline is, we deliver truth to youth. So you're doing the same thing. You're doing an
my
outreach.
tagline is actually where truth wins every time.
Interesting. I like it. We're very much on the same page. So that's another reason I reached out. That's cool. So explain to our audience, our target audience is the best way of saying it, are the millennials. We're trying to help these young people understand what's going on by connecting the dots and, helping them sort through the melee that is mainstream media and all the other garbage that their ears have been filled with through public education, et cetera. So tell me where you're coming from. I mean, I read some of the stuff. Unfortunately, I didn't have time to read your book, but I will. About the similarities and the differences between what we know as terrorism and what we may not recognize as terrorism that you refer to both as part of the jihad. Is that a good question for you?
I call it. There's two terminologies to call this is a form of jihad. Some people call it a stealth jihads. I use the term the Muslim Brotherhood created, which is civilization jihad. It's not my term, it's their term.
Right.
And that comes from a document that was found thanks to one police officer. These police officers are outstanding because we owe them a debt of thanks for what they're doing today.
Yes.
One police officer saw a woman and a man in a car. The woman was taking pictures of the Chesapeake Bay Bridge support structure. Mm-hmm. And the cop did what we would consider a basic traffic stop. Got the guy's ID. Finds out his name is Ismail Abrace, and he's wanted by the FBI for questioning. Praise God that they caught him doing this, because that gave him a chance to do one thing. Put a warrant out for his house, and they searched it and found a hidden dugout basement underneath his basement were 93 bankers' boxes of documents by the North American Muslim Brotherhood. And in there, there's one document. It's called the Explanatory Memorandum.
I saw
it was written all the way back in 1991, and this is where it gets important. If you think about 1991 is almost 30 years ago now. 20 years. It's crazy when you think about this.
Yeah.
And so we start looking at what they said back then, and this is one paragraph out of that document, and says this: the process of settlement is a civilization jihadist process with all the word means. The Ikhwan must understand that their work in America is a kind of grand jihad in eliminating and destroying the Western civilization from within and sabotaging its miserable house by their hands and the hands of the believers, so that it is eliminated and God's religion is made victorious over all other religions. Without this level of understanding, we are not up to this challenge and have not prepared ourselves for jihad yet. It is a Muslim's destiny to perform jihad and work wherever he is and wherever he lands until the final hour comes. And there is no escape from that destiny except for those who choose to slack. But would the slackers and the mujahideen be equal? Now, let's talk about their long-term. These guys are into long-term planning. Please understand that. So
I do. Yes, sir.
They came here to the States in the 60s. But they started in Canada because it's easier to become a Canadian citizen. And during the time frame they were coming in, they couldn't get into the United States.
Right.
They had to become Canadians first.
They could only come in as exchange students, and at that point in time, we tracked them fairly tightly.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I mean, we laugh about how they're the stuff they're trying to complain about Trump. Is trying to protect Americans by putting hate or eliminating Muslim countries. Well, there's more Muslim countries allowed under his ban than there are not allowed. So that's a humorous piece right there.
Oh yeah.
But let's be historically and geographically accurate, which these judges are not doing because they're politically motivated.
Yep.
But this history is extremely important, and you just told me that how important history is to what you're talking about.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
And we need to talk about what civilization jihad also is not. Terrorism, it is what we call sedition.
Yes.
And that's important. So one of my articles I actually wrote is that civilization jihadis are not terrorists. They are basically seditious bastards. I'll say that. And so this is all important. And the reason, the people who commit violent acts, they will call that terrorism. And I don't even consider it terrorism. I consider it treason because they're acting against the United States.
Correct.
And the penalty for treason, what is that? I think that's still death.
I think,
And it's a very important penalty. And until we start giving them the penalty of what they get for treason, and we start recognizing that, we're not going to recognize there's a war declared against us. The civilization jihad is a war. Here's one of the definitions from Sunni Islam. It's from Reliance of the Traveler, which I recommend anybody serious about learning about Islam pick up. Reliance of the Traveler spelled with 2 L's. And this comes from, Reliance of the Traveler is a translation of Sharia, Hanafi law, into English. Now, I'm just going to read you from 09.0 Jihad. It says this. Jihad means to war against non-Muslims and is etymologically derived from the word mujahada, signifying warfare to establish the religion. And it is the lesser jihad. As for the lower self, which is why the Prophet, Allah bless, well, I'm not going to read that part, and as he returned from jihad.
Right.
Now, what's important in this definition is if you keep going, there are several explanations from their scriptures and from the Quran and from the Hadiths that explain what this actually means. So here's one. It says we have returned from the lesser jihad to the greater jihad. That's the only mention, period, in a quote,
right,
of a greater jihad.
Right.
Okay, nobody ever goes beyond that. Now here's the rest. The scriptural basis says, prior to scholarly census, is such Quranic verses as fighting is prescribed for you. Slay them wherever you find them. That's Quran 49. Last one was Quran 2:16. How about this one? Fight the idolaters utterly. Quran 9:36. Mm-hmm. And it goes on to list all these hadiths. They're too numerous.
Yes.
But there's really no mention of a quiet jihad.
Right.
So what the Muslim Brotherhood did, which is they learned through getting the crap beat out of them in Egypt, is that if you're quiet and subtle, you can take over. Basically, they took lessons from Sun Tzu.
Yes.
I think somebody actually read The Art of War by Sun Tzu and is actually paying attention to that.
I read The Art of War as part of my schooling, but I practiced it as a salesman.
Oh, it's an incredibly good, effective way. Yes. I was a salesman. I understand that
You
totally.
know exactly what I'm saying.
Yes.
So, yeah. What prompted you? I mean, I'm extremely fond of what you're saying, and I understand it. What prompted you to go down that path? I mean, can you recall that a trigger mechanism that said?
Well, what happened for me to actually get going in this? I was one of the what I call willingly ignorant, and it's not necessarily willingly stupid, but willingly ignorant, which makes me stupid. Well, understand that. That's what I was. That's what I was.
Yeah.
So here I'm going to. I got involved in a 912 group and having a great time with them.
Okay.
And the 912 groups were one of the conservative groups during Obama's time, and I ended up being a leader in that. But way before we got to this, to the point where I was leading, this lady, Helen, says to me, she says, Paul, did you know Nazareth College took $500,000 from the International, got to say it right, International, I get the words mixed up.
That's all right, don't worry.
Institute of Islamic Thought, International Institute of Islamic Thought. They call themselves IIIT.
Okay.
And I was like, no. I says, but the name stayed with me. I kept thinking, I'm a guy who's known for doing research. By this point, my books were in every Barnes and Noble in the country.
Nice.
In education, and I had helped, So my books back then, I was working for an exam group who publishes teacher certification study guides, and my books were in literally every Barnes and Noble in the country.
Nice.
So that felt good, but now you get this person, and I know this group. And I say I'm known for my research and education. So now I'm looking into this. I spend a half hour, only a half hour, doing research, and it causes me to do a little more. I'm up to maybe an hour at the most, and I discover this is part of the Muslim Brotherhood.
Sure.
And, oh my gosh, they're connected to Al-Qaeda. They're connected to Hamas. And I find this out in a half hour to an hour's worth of research. And I'm wondering, what the heck is going on at the college where I got my master's?
Uh-huh.
So I write a letter to the president of the college, Nazareth College of Rochester.
How dare
and
you.
he ignores me.
Yeah.
He ignores me.
Yep.
Okay, I am not a nobody. I was in Kappa Delta Pi. I was one of the leaders of Kappa Delta Pi, which is the Honor Society for Educators.
Yeah, but that's a lot of money you're questioning.
Oh, well, it gets you better. So not only was I that, I was a graduate assistant, and whenever I had called before, I always got a call back.
Oh.
So now they ignore me.
Now you're.
So I take my letter to the president and I put it in an alumni form in LinkedIn. Good. What happens? I get blacklisted for asking questions
from the group by the LinkedIn group.
No, I got blacklisted by Nazareth College.
Oh.
Yes.
Congratulations.
So that you don't piss off. One of the stupidest things you can do to a research writer is piss them off.
Yeah.
And that's what happened, and I just went and learned more and more and more. And I published something online, and Ryan Morrow, who was with Fox News, actually encouraged me to write my first book and encouraged me to keep going. And
good for you.
So I owe him kudos for that. And yeah, that's how I got involved. I was one of the willingly ignorant, and now I travel the country whenever possible and speak on this. I've actually proposed legislation I wouldn't say call it legislation. I've proposed a joint resolution for Congress to pass.
I read about your joint resolution. Yep, I saw that. And so you're coming from the outside with your JR, trying to find congressional sponsors or a sponsor.
Trying to find one guy with the balls to do the job, basically.
Yeah, do what he was hired to do. Let me take you back. Let me take you back a little bit in the conversation, because one question I meant to ask, because I want the audience to understand the difference, the unique difference between treason and sedition. They both have the same goal, but in legalese they are defined differently, and I'm sure you know what that is. So tell the audience the difference between those two topics.
Okay. Well, sedition is basically you have not committed a violent act, nor have you organized a violent act. However, you have organized an event or purpose against the federal government. Mm-hmm. And that can include slowing the government down. It can include keeping the government from learning things. It's very broad definition. And if you just simply Google sedition and law, you will find a nice section of that on federal law.
And it's probably incredibly difficult because it's so broad. Therefore, it's incredibly challenging to pursue.
It's not challenging to pursue. Here's the issue: we do not charge people with sedition in this country unless we are at war.
Oh.
That is the only time we in this country charge people with sedition.
What do we do? Do we chalk it up to their freedom of speech? I mean,
generally that is what happens, and that is basically the McCarthy era is the false people, the people who told lies to McCarthy are responsible for that. However, we have to remember that McCarthy did hear a great number of truths, and one of our past presidents testified at a McCarthy committee, and that's Ronald Reagan. So we have to recognize that communists were infiltrating us, and this is one of the things I actually talk about is, if Ronald Reagan's telling us the truth about how they did this, how they did get in, and he's talking about getting into actors guilds and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. I mean, in his biography, he talks about this. So
you just caused me to think about something. Have you had Trevor Loudon on your show?
No, I haven't. We've met a couple times at CPAC. It's about as close as we've gotten. Yes,
he would love to do it. I can tell you. I've had him on mine. You need to reach out to him through the internet. Since you shared Mr. Hayes with me, he's perfect for what you're saying and has a lot of knowledge. So
We'll definitely have to try it. Yeah, definitely.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to take you off your.
He's amazing.
Yep.
I think you'll find we're trading back some definite sources. Definitely I haven't contacted Trevor. I haven't talked. I'm missing out on CPAC this week.
Well, it's particularly interesting because he's Australian.
Yes, and and in some sense it's worse down there than here.
Well, that's his whole thing. Is we're the last great hope in the world, and if we don't wake up, which is part of your message as well as part of my message, if we don't wake up, it's going to be over, and we won't know what hit us. Because another side of my world is I am a cybersecurity person. So you're talking a warfare that's going on that nobody sees, and yet it's happening. And, it's kind of a combination of your treason and sedition. Anyway, so that's why I guess I'm so much in tune with the message you're delivering.
Well, it's truthful, and this is and say we go back a little bit. What he's talking about, you combine jihadists into the cyber warfare, and a lot. I'm teaching my kids when we talk about Islamic jihadis is one of the concepts called whack-a-mole. My students always laugh. I mean, this is high school. I'm working with kids who are researching terrorism for a project.
Good for you.
And I have a good laugh teaching that to them every year. And one of their projects is to write a policy paper, and somebody always picks terrorism, and
Sure.
I'm their resource person on that.
Good for you.
So I have a good laugh with that. When I talk to them about whack-a-mole, that basically whack-a-mole is you whack one of the Twitter accounts, you whack one of the Facebooks, one of these social network accounts, and about another 10 pop up.
Yeah. I used to play whack-a-mole. I'm a whack-a-mole generation. So how do we? I'm convinced. I'm sure that the audience is like, holy moly, what are these guys talking about? How do we fight it? What do we? I mean, I constantly trigger on this. Actually, the softer side. I concern myself somewhat with the terrorism side, but I'm far more concerned with the side that you're bringing out, and that's the civilization jihad, because it's not as perceptible, and our young people, I don't think, are confident enough nor educated enough to recognize it when they see it. Do you find that to be a concern?
I'm drastically concerned about this, and it is difficult for many to see and understand. Well, let's take a basic look at some new, recent. I'll just pull up some recent stories. One of them would be how Hasbro all of a sudden decided they need a Barbie to wear Islamic clothing.
There you go.
So this is called civilization jihad because they're trying to change what is considered normal Western wear into Muslim Sharia-compliant clothing.
And make it acceptable.
Yes. And then Macy's decided to take a step further and make it normal to be able to go into Macy's and buy a hijab. My recommendation, what to do with Macy's? Boycott.
Sure.
That's how you respond to people who want to turn you into a dhimmi. Dhimmi, the term dhimmi, D-H-I-M-M-I, is something everybody should learn.
Yes, sir.
And I'm going to recommend people pick up a book by Bat Yeor. It's B-A-T space Y-E-O-R. And she's written some incredible books, and one of them is on dhimmitude. And you have to, my recommendation is pick it up. I mean, sleep with that book. It is that important. It is that it'll impact your life incredibly. What's scary about it is nobody wants to live like that. And she writes from a historical perspective. Mm-hmm. And she lives in France. And as a professor over there, she's outstanding in what she does because people don't know this part of history. And this is one of the most destructive things that is happening in schools today. We don't teach this.
No.
in public schools, and it absolutely should be taught.
Well, go ahead.
And if we taught that, we might not have this civilization jihad going on. But then we don't teach the truth about what Islam teaches as well.
Right. Well, and the other thing that we don't teach that I've got a feeling you and I both had at similar times was how to read between the lines, how to logically take something apart and see what they're really trying to tell you.
I just did that this week with my seniors. There was a news story about about the shooter in Florida that came out this week, and the story was that the shooter was affiliated with white supremacist group.
I saw that.
The humorous part about the reporting of this, so the only ones that I knew that got this really well reported and were able to easily deny, say that the story was wrong, was Breitbart. Breitbart talked about where the story came from. Mm-hmm. Because they knew where the story came from. I said to my students as I read it to them, I said, something's wrong with this story.
Yes.
Because they were reporting it to a Jewish guy. Okay, wait a minute. White supremacists and Jews don't get along. Let's get that understood. So why would he do that? And the purpose was to get out misinformation.
Sure.
And now the story that, I think that story came out Thursday, is that he was a white supremacist. Friday the story was he was not a white supremacist. and that's reading between the lines. Yes, our kids need to learn how to do that. Unfortunately, cognitively, I don't think they're really ready to get it. We actually practice this. It's a normal 9th grade English exercise, working on reading between the lines.
Good for you. Good for you.
But it's not a normal. We don't talk about doing that with news. We probably need to do that more.
Yeah. I think that's where we did it when I was growing up. If I recall correctly, it was about reading current events, reading the newspaper, and then discussing what we'd read and trying to see through. I mean, I gave up newspapers back in the 60s, and before I did, when I would pick one up, I always would pick it up and say, let's see what they want us to think today.
It's
because
that is so true, because so many of them, at least the one here, my father, who's a Democrat, won't even look at the paper. That's about it, because it's not worth the paper it's printed on, because the news stories, which are supposed to be unbiased, are fully opinionated.
Oh, it's editorial.
And even my father recognizes that.
It's editorial top to bottom. It was a tad bit better when at least we had more than one newspaper in town. And
yes.
And now in all of the major metropolitan areas, there's just the paper. And, they consolidated, or one or the other of them went out of business or whatever. And so when there's no dissenting voice from another newspaper in town, then nobody else's opinion matters unless it's of equal. You know what I'm saying? In other words, you got radio stations compete with each other. That's fine, but what you don't have there's just it's the newspaper, and so.
Well, here's another good example. It's in the news this week. Mm-hmm. A Baltimore Sun's Jonathan Pitts pushed. He's saying it's a good thing that Hamas, which is basically Hamas in America, which is known as CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations. That's Hamas, guys. If you want to know, even the federal courts recognize it.
Yep.
Okay?
Yep.
Which means, by law, they should not be allowed to exist in the United States. So, this is the stuff I can't figure out. Somebody can explain to me why a terrorist-identified network is allowed to work under a claim of being a civil rights organization, even though we know they are connected to Hamas. Somebody explain that one to me. I cannot figure out how legally they can exist.
Okay, I'm gonna explain it to you, and you're gonna be really upset when I tell you, because you know the answer. Follow the money.
Yes.
Follow the money, and that's. I don't know,
and that money, I know exactly who it goes to, and there's a great group called. Oh my gosh. There's a great group done by the Middle East Forum, and it talks about, and it does Islamic politics, and I'll pull it up and get it. The Middle East Forum, MEF, I'll pull it up. Middle East Forum, I can't think of it.
It's not fair. I didn't know you were going to use notes. I'm not using notes. How can you?
Oh, no, I'm pulling this up because I can't remember. Middle East Forum, MEFORUM.org. Please pull that up, and you'll be amazed with what you find there.
Oh, no.
And let's see, under activities, it's under activities, I think.
I've got my own rabbit holes to run down. I'm not going to run down yours.
Yeah. There's, let's see, the legal project. There's an Islamist project that they do, basically. Yeah. Islamist Watch, that's what it is. If you go, Islamist-watch.org.
Okay.
Yeah. And they actually follow the money. Where is Islamist money going to politicians? And they will publish stuff on that.
Sweet.
It's outstanding.
I've probably seen them. Yeah.
Oh, I'm thrilled. The people who are writing for them, I've had 2 or 3 people on the show from the Middle East Forum, and I keep getting more because I'm just amazed with the amount of work that's done by Middle East Forum as a whole.
Good for you. So what can we do? What can the audience do to help you? To help promote what you're doing. The direct. You have a website. Do you have?
One of the things you can today, I guess. You can go to. I'm starting my own website. It's Paul Sutliff, all one word.
There you go.
It's PAULSUTLI, 2 F's as in Frank.
Yep.
.com, and that's how you can get in contact with me. One of the things I'm trying to do is I'm trying to improve my website, and that takes money.
Yeah.
If you want to donate that way, you can find me. You can find links through my blog, which is paulsutliff.blogspot.com, and that takes you to a series of articles. I think the biggest thing that people can do today is do what the news is not doing, which is, hook up with me. You'll find I'll share news with you on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on Twitter. Every day I put about 10 stories that have to do with terrorism or civilization jihad. And I do that for I share stories for about an hour every morning. And there's just so much out there. Once you start realizing it, it's mind-blowing. And I've gotten some great kudos from the federal government for doing this.
Oh, I'm sure.
I never expected that. And I'm some people that are way high up in the Navy, called to work for what I'm doing, a national treasure. And I kind of find that humorous because I'm doing what they're not allowed to do as feds,
right? Because
they can't show this.
Right.
But what it is the news people are not doing their job. Is what it is. They're afraid to tell us the truth.
Thank you very much. I got one suggestion for you. Your last name is spelled Sutliff, and you said as in Frank.
Yeah, there's 2 F's as in Frank.
But there's only 1 F in Frank.
Okay, 2 F's at the end. So the original name, just to get everybody to get the last 2 F's, original name was Sutcliffe. When my family came here on the second Mayflower, they dropped the C. So IFF.
Okay. And what I thought of and wrote down when you said it was firefighter.
Firefighter?
2 F's as in firefighter.
Oh, firefighter. Oh, I hadn't thought about that one.
I thought I'd give you a laugh. I know you.
Oh, that would make sense. My son's a firefighter.
There you go.
Yeah.
So, but 2 F's as in Frank. I struggle with that. Like, where's the second F? He's right. My first thought was he spells Frank kind of funny. Anyway.
Oh wow.
I have really enjoyed the conversation. And I would hope we can do it again real soon.
I would like that.
I think that we have very similar thoughts and very similar concerns. And, it's fun to have you on and help deliver truth to youth. And, maybe we can return the favor sometime on your show. So,
definitely.
I will, Anna's been making notes about what we need to look up in our homework that you gave the assignment actually to the audience, but I'll need to know it. I got a feeling too, so I appreciate Rut row. Time to go. You have been listening to the Doc Owen Show. Thank you so much for having us. We really appreciate it. Now go out there this week and take care, pay attention, and God bless.
Bye-bye, folks. God bless.